Hello everybody, James Rink here, and Douglas is going to talk a little bit about, I guess we're going to go to the Title of Nobility Amendment, NESARA, the global settlements, maybe the dinar, I guess wherever all this stuff's going to take us. So this is about prosperity and abundance, about the new financial paradigm, and I just want to so I don't even know where to begin, but just go ahead and share. I guess let's just talk a little bit about the Title of Nobility Amendment, because in my documentary Changes on the Horizon, we go into basically how lawyers are not supposed to be, not just lawyers, doctors, clergymen, anyone who has a title of nobility cannot run for public office. And of course, I don't know what is it, 90% of all all politicians are attorneys, or is it 70%? I forgot what percentage it is, but it's pretty high. So literally, our government is infested. All these politicians are attorneys, and they're not even allowed to run for public office. So, I guess with the NESARA law, this is supposed to overturn. Well, that's how they were able to get NESARA announced.
That's right. Absolutely. If you look back to the history of the 13th Amendment, which is also called the TONA, a lot of the paperwork that has kind of flew down through the years since it was passed in 1810 is actually called the TONA, which is the Title of Nobility Amendment. That is the short abbreviation that a lot of the congressmen and the lawyers and everybody else who wants to keep this hidden from the public. Let's look at the history of the Titles of Nobility Amendment. When Benjamin Franklin and John Adams and John Jr. Went on their trip to France after the Revolutionary War here in the Americas, they had actually went to sign the Treaty of Paris, which is also called the Jay Treaty. There was a section there to where everything would come out and they would be righted for the American people and the actual continent itself as being a free country, due to the fact that we had won the Revolutionary War and that we were now a sovereign free nation. When that happened, Benjamin Franklin and John and his son were all captured and arrested by one of the king's agents. Now, the king had stated that they had won the war. America had won the independence, and they were a free nation. However, those three men were still titles of nobility. They were still esquires through the crown. And at that point, they were to be arrested, tried, and then murdered for treason against the crown. Instead of giving the freedom to the American people, they negotiated contracts without America knowing it, and they gave it all back to the king in predecession of 25% of all the taxes and all the abundance that would come through what we considered goods and services and anything that we would keep as savings. 25% of that was to go to the crown and also to be split with the Vatican Bank in Rome. After that, the history of Ben Franklin and John Adams and his son was not very abundant because they were afraid that people would find out just exactly what they did in secrecy. So since the time of the Treaty of Paris, this thing has been locked away. Now, when you're getting back to the actual history part of it, let's go even further to when there was two separate people that wanted to pass a Titles of Nobility Amendment. The first one, I do not remember his name, but the main one, his name was Senator Reed. And I do not know Senator Reed's first name. I have not read onto it that much as who he was. But he was one of the guys who proposed the first Titles of Nobility Amendment that came to pass in 1810. What you're going to realize is that the Congress that was in our offices at that time and a few years before knew that we had to have a Titles of Nobility Amendment to deter any of the British Crown called esquires from getting into public office, from becoming basically controllers of the systems that were here in the America, including medical systems, including the offices that were to be taken in each state and local and county offices, and also through the higher-ups of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, including the President and Vice Presidential cabinets. Now, when the states decided to vote on this, there was a record kept of every state from the time of 1809 up until 1810 when they were to be ratified and brought into law. There was 2 states at that time that were not properly states that could not actually ratify, and that was Vermont and Rhode Island. Those 2 states were not properly ratified as states into the Union, and they were not allowed to vote. They tried very hard to vote and were not allowed. Also, South Carolina voted against the Titles of Nobility Amendment, but because they were in the percentile that could not enforce this law to not be enacted, then they lost out. The only state left to make the 13 states required was Virginia, and Virginia did ratify in the year of 1812. It was documented, it was printed, and copies were sent out to not only the Secretary of Arms, but also the President at the time. And Virginia, even though they had ratified, all of a sudden the War of 1812 had broke out before that ratification process could become recorded. When the War of 1812 happened, you had the Library of Congress and also a library in Virginia were burned down. There was only 2 libraries that had most of the records from the past 38-year history in the Americas. And so the attempt by the British and the Crown, which was King George, was not to burn down anything, but to steal those documents. They wanted to make sure that these documents that prohibited the Titles of Nobility Amendment would be in their possession so they could use it, control it, and bring it away from the American people. In 1819, after of course, the war stopped in 1814, and in 1819, some of the people of the colonies, the original colonies, especially North Carolina and Virginia and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, those states wanted to find out what happened to the original signed copies. When they went out and started doing some research and started questioning some of the governors and also the president at the time, they needed to know where that ratification process was. They found out that there was multiple copies that were made and sent to different states and the territories. And these states had the original Titles of Nobility Amendment that had been integrated with the original constitutional amendments of 12. The Titles of the Nobility Amendment was called the 13th Amendment. We call it the original 13th.
Why don't you go ahead and read it?
Sure, absolutely.
Got a copy right there.
Thank you. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States, and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them, or either of them. The Constitution requires 3/4 of the states to ratify a proposed amendment before it may be added to the Constitution. Therefore, when we found out that Virginia actually ratified, then they had made it law. But yet it was finally re-ratified in 1819 because of the proof of the copies that were sent to the Sergeant of Arms, the President, and also the state's governors in the territories at that time. So it was a valid process. However, during the years of 1821 and 1878, there was a lot of titles of nobility, Congress people. There was also some governors that had become lawyers at the time, and they wanted to make sure through other esquires or lawyers that the 13th Amendment would slowly disappear from the text and also from the documentations of each state of the Union. And that was a very slow process. It's almost like pouring water into the bottle. You want to make sure it's all in there, but don't spill any because you don't want people to notice it. So they did this in secrecy throughout the years. And of course, at the end of the 1800s, it was completely admonished and wiped out from every textbook and certification that was in the Union at that point. Therefore, when the presidents such as Lincoln and also Buchanan and some of the presidents around that time were slowly start to integrate more amendments to the Constitution, which was illegal because of the sine die that took place in 1859 by Buchanan. So the Titles of Nobility Amendment was therefore no longer in our textbooks. Nobody could find it, and the only people who had accessibility, the availability, and the ability to do this was the lawyers.
And I just want to mention that sine die is basically where the southern states pulled out of Congress, and what happened is they basically Congress could not hold a lawful session because they didn't have enough members in Congress to make a ruling. So sine die, they had basically the government was under martial law, and all rules of law weren't really wasn't even part of the constitutional government. So really, the 13th Amendment, according to school textbooks anyway, is written up as basically the slavery amendment. But so clearly Lincoln must have known that. I mean, by that time, some law books would have had the original 13th Amendment, and yet here he is doing another 13th Amendment. So he must have been in on it.
What happened with Lincoln is that in 1859, Buchanan was president. There was a case, going back to what James was saying about the Congress walking out, there was a case called Sanford versus Mitchell. I believe that was the plaintiff and also the defendant in the case. It was Sanford versus Mitchell, if I'm correct on that. The Congress could not come to a decision on that case because at that point every Supreme Court was in every county at that time through the original Republic Constitution. During this case, the Congress of the South, representatives of the South were so disgusted with the progress of the case that the Southern representatives just walked out. They just left. The North, the representatives, also were, they didn't know what to think of it. They had only half of their Congress in session, so 30 minutes later they walked out also, completely angry. Buchanan closed the series of the hearings at that point, and by law he had to wait 61 days. When those 61 days have come, he slammed his gavel and declared martial law on the entire country because the Congress, since the prior 61 days, was in the sine die, which means without day. So at that point, we have been under martial law. The whole nation has. We've been under martial law ever since. If you look around and you see your police departments, if you see your FBI, you see your anybody that is TSA, anybody who is considered a upper hand of law is because of the police state, which is martial law. This country has existed under martial law since 1859. Lincoln was supposed to be sworn in on January the 4th. They pushed it back. The members of Congress pushed it back to January 24th and did it after a lame duck session the day before, which was illegal. Throughout the Republic Constitution, you cannot call a fake form of session, which is called lame duck, and they had done that the day before. On January 24th, he was sworn in, and then he signed an agreement to install another form of Congress without voting, and that was the continuation of martial law. So Lincoln had known what he was doing beforehand, and his times of distraught throughout his presidency was not because of the North and the South trying to fight each other. It was because he had signed the country into martial law, and he had also tried to deal with the Rothschild banking dynasty. He had tried to deal with the Knights of the Golden Circle that come in and was trying to ruin the North and the South through the cotton industry.
They were also inciting the KKK. Well, later became the KKK.
Absolutely, it did.
Race riots.
Yes, it did. And through Mexico, France would come in through one of the Rothschild agents, and he would be able to take Mexico over by force.
Well, basically, they had troops. The British troops were stationed in. The French were in Mexico.
Yes.
And also the British had troops stationed in Canada. So they were waiting for a civil war to occur just so that they could come in and, I guess, save the day, or at least claim as such.
That's right. Well, they had troops above New York City in the Canadian border on the naval fleet. And they also had them at the ports above the American borders near Oregon, which we consider now Oregon, which was near the Canadian border. And so as the history has shown us, that Lincoln was then deciding to turn around. So he actually flip-flopped during halfway on this thing and wrote a letter to the Tsar Alexander in Russia to send in fleets from his army to the Virginia coastline and also to the San Francisco ports. And so the reason for this, they had told France and England through the Rothschild banking dynasty that if any of those ships, any of the people on those ships decided to come onto the territories of America at the time or through the Mexican border, that Russia would intervene and there would no longer be an England or a France. They would make sure that they took over all of those countries. And so the war could have come out quite differently if Russia had not been there to deter the English and the French troops from coming in. So
talk about how basically later on down the road, Rothschild, because Rothschild was funding the British troops in Canada and French troops in Mexico, and Rothschild later on retaliated against the Tsars by fomenting the Bolshevik Revolution with Trotsky and that lovely lot by financing it. So they got their revenge later down the road.
Yes, they did. And you will also find out that we are seeing now in 2013, 2012, and 2013, the culmination of Russia, Mother Russia, coming back to her true stance in history to be able to take down the Rothschild dynasty. So Russia has now been a very, very integral part, and Vladimir Putin going in and being one of the key guys helping to restore a lot of the European continents and get them away from the Rothschild banking dynasty. And this is happening, as we speak. So Russia is a very key part in this whole system to rid the world of the evil of the Rothschild banking dynasty. Lincoln was the one who signed the Lieber Code. He is the one who kept us under martial law. He's the one who was trying at the end, before he was assassinated, to bring the country back to the gold standard and also bring us back to the original Republic Constitution. When Lincoln decided that he was going to admonish the Lieber Code and take it out and bring us back to that Republic Constitution from 1810, he made an announcement to Congress in doing so, and he set a date. 2 weeks later, he was assassinated. So that is what happened with him trying to stop this dynasty from taking over America. And as you will know in past, the Change is on the Horizon miniseries from a few years back, that the gentleman who actually killed Lincoln left the country and went to England to serve out the last of his days, because he was an English citizen also. So John,
I also heard a report that John Wilkes Booth lived out his final days in Kansas. I don't know if you've heard that as well.
He was in England. He went back to England.
Okay.
He did not want to chance living in America.
And supposedly they found a vagrant, and like a homeless guy, and they just claimed that was him.
That's correct.
nobody questioned, because everybody was still suffering from the trauma of losing their president
That's
at that
correct.
time.
It was a broken farmer who was the guy who was hung for the crimes of the assassination. So it was a farmer who was actually broke, and that's who they found in the barn. So
Same thing kind of went on with JFK.
Absolutely.
Get their patsies.
Well, Garfield too. If you look at President Garfield, he only lasted 100 days in presidency, and President James Garfield was the one who said, "If you," and I don't know the complete wording to this because it was a long statement, but in so many words, he said, "If you can look and see how." Who and what controls the money system and the money supply in America, you won't have to be told who is actually in charge of the banks and how inflation and deflation occurs." And James Garfield was one of the presidents, the good presidents, just as John Tyler was, that tried to end the banking system, and of course paid with it with their lives, as JFK did. So there was a lot of presidents that were out there who were trying to stop this from happening. But then we go back to the lawyers. We go back to how they were culminating this, and then it took assassins to make sure that the presidents would not sign executive orders or would not, take the country in another direction or pull us out of martial law. But it was the lawyers who culminated this, and the assassins were only the ones who could seal the deal, and that's just the way it was. When you can't do something by paperwork, then you do it by force, and that's exactly how the Illuminati and the cabal governments of the world have always worked.
And what exactly does BAR stand for?
British Associated. Help me out, James. What is it? British Associated.
I heard registry, but I don't think that's right because I read.
I don't either. I don't think it is. I don't think it is a registry. It's
I know. I need to pull that one up.
But it is. It is British Associated, and the third letter I don't know what it stands for. But if we said registry, we would be darn close.
Yeah.
But every single member of the United States that is a lawyer who goes before the bar, they raise their hand and they swear by the bar. And when they have been sworn in, they are told that they are no longer citizens of the United States, that they have rescinded their American citizenship, and they are granted the Crown's citizen. That is what they are told. Every single lawyer knows it, and they've done it, and the only reason they've done it is because of money and power. That is why they do it. The bar is a national, state, local government piece. It comes all the way down from the bar, which is out of Europe. So they know it instantly when they take that titles of nobility. They're given the title Esquire. Every one of them are guilty, and every single one of them are guilty of treason. Every one of them know it.
I just want to thank Doug for sharing that information section about the Title of Nobility Amendment. And again, much of what we're told in the history books is basically, I hate to say it, it's a lie. And we both know that whoever is the victor usually is able to write history. So if these bankers think that, they control the money supply, they don't really think they do. And we're just all being led along, taken out for lunch. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about NESARA, and basically to give you a little background what's going on here. Back in the 1970s, mid-1970s, there was a group of, it started off with one farmer, I believe the Baskerville
Foster case. The
Baskerville Foster case.
Yes.
And what happened is that they were trying to foreclose on his father's farm. He was actually a military general, and his father signed a mortgage, basically, which granted in the event of the borrower's death, the property would be reverted back to the bank, which should have been totally illegal, but the guy didn't. He didn't really read the paperwork, and so when his father died, he moved. The son moved onto the farm to take it over, but the farm, the banker showed up to foreclose on it. And so he tried fighting it off, and eventually what happened is the case went all the way up to Supreme Court, but in the process he networked with over 300 other individuals, who had similar problems with the same bank, and it wasn't a class action lawsuit; it was a joint action lawsuit where multiple lawsuits all in the same area, and it did finally go to the Supreme Court. And so at this point, I'm going to just go ahead and let Doug take over. So,
thank you, James. When Roy Swasinger Jr., and we are sure that that is not his real name because he is one of the trustees that are involved with bringing back this republic and the gold standard, but we will call him Roy Swasinger Jr. because at that time, that's who he was known to be with going through this process. This gentleman was involved in the Baskerville Foster case, which was the first class action case that rose to how great it is now, what we consider the Farmers Claims Program. Roy Swasinger is the gentleman who had his father to die while he was a landowner and in Colorado. And he actually, when his father died, as James just stated, he went in to live on the land, to farm it. And he was a retired military general, and he knew that, because of the reversion back to his the rightful heirs of his father's property, that he could live a long and healthy life there. However, as fate would have it, the bankers came in because of a document that was signed by his father without knowing truth behind the land and what would happen once he passed away. Well, the powers that be, the evil bankers, decided to take the land upon that document that was signed. And Roy had no recourse to getting it back. But as a smart military general and as a constitutional military man, he was able to start the class action suit. It grew from 3 people to 4 people, then it grew to 8, and then to 18, then to 33, and then it became over hundreds of people that were included in this whole class action suit. Then it became thousands. So it grew as the years went by because of people who would come in and say, the bankers are taking my land. We have rights for our own land. We've made this payment. We've done this and that, and we've always paid our taxes on it. We have oil wells. We have gas wells, and they're taking the profits off of that. We pay the taxes on those oil wells and the gas that comes off, but we've never seen the money. One of our friends, whose name is Daryl Freck, and his wife Sally went through the same procedure. They had gas wells, and they had a lot of land that they farmed at the time. And lo and behold, the government came in and was not giving them money for their gas wells. They were paying the taxes, they were farming the land, and after a few months, which turned out to a couple of years as I understand it, they were forced into foreclosure because of the evil bankers. So Daryl and his wife actually became part of this class action suit. Daryl is a very special man because not only did he videotape the organized sessions that Roy Swasinger Jr. had made. There were 17 of them. He showed up at the first of the sessions. There was people that came in from the county and local areas, and they had a question and answer session after a brief presentation was given by Roy Swasinger. In doing so, people began to understand what the government and the bankers were actually doing and how they were doing it. And in the process, as Daryl was filming these 17 meetings, he was making copies and sending them off, and also documenting certain things that were said and also used in common law forums. At that point, they were able to bring about the Farmer Claims Programs, which had over 300,000 claimants in there. When totaled, it became trillions and trillions of dollars that had been swindled away by the bankers and the politicians in Washington. So these 17 meetings were what we consider the small fires that started the big roaring prairie fire. It was these small get-ups that became the multiple horse race, and after that it has grown ever since. It was done in such a fashion that they used the Uniform Commercial Code in every state. All states had the UCC. They were finally being able to use that UCC in their own defense against the politicians and the bankers, except for Louisiana. But that came to a close in 1993 when Mr. Schlesinger opened up a case in Texas under the 6th District, and he was able to use the Uniform Commercial Code in that district to help Louisiana bring in, because they were still under Napoleonic Code. So he was able to bring in the UCC, use it in the state through that district only. So every state now in the Union has the Uniform Commercial Code as of the year 2000, and they are able to use it and adopt it, except the powers that be, including the Bush-Scherf clan, are the ones that have been extremely successful in stopping any of this knowledge to getting out to the people, which brings us to the NESARA law that was passed in the year 2000. A lot of the farmer claims programs, the roll programs, Omega, Burgerveen, Alpha, Destiny, all these programs that are out there, including the farm claims, including the Freedom Trust, all of these are for the people, and the money has been set aside or donated from the wealthy visionaries to make sure that this change and this golden age can be ushered into the American people by the year of 2000. However, as the law of NESARA was written in before 2000 and signed into law in 2000 by the only legal 15 members of Congress that weren't lawyers, it would require in 18 months of what
that again goes to the Title of Nobility Amendment.
Absolutely.
That's why only, what did you say, 50 members
only
of Congress?
15. Yeah, 15 members of Congress were not lawyers at that time.
Okay.
They were true members of Congress. They signed this bill. It passed. It went through. Bill Clinton, at gunpoint, was made to sign this law because Congress had passed it.
Do you think that's legal to put a president under gunpoint and have him sign a law and make that,
Yes, and I'll tell you why. In 1991, George Bush 41 was captured and arrested in Paraguay. He was brought before a judicial committee under trial by treason.
Okay, back up. You said he's in Paraguay. Why was he in Paraguay?
Because George Bush owns property out in Paraguay. He and a few other of the elitists have a lot of property that is in certain places that they could steal their loot, hide it, and nobody could come in and retrieve it, or they could never be found. So the New World Order takes place. They're able to escape to wherever they need to escape, and then everybody else in the world suffered, whether it's by nuclear war or by biological warfare or just plain pain and suffering. So the Bush family knew this, and they knew how to steal the loot, except they have been caught, as you will find out later in the series. But in 1991, Bush 41, George Scherf Jr., was captured, arrested, and brought before this committee under trial by treason, and was ordered to sign 2 executive orders. There may have been more, but we know of 2. One of them was 12778, which was the authority of the Farm Claims Program. He was made to sign these executive orders, and the reason was because of an order that was written in 1911 before the Federal Reserve Act was actually made into law in 1913. In 1911, the president at the time knew that the Federal Reserve Bank was on a fast course to becoming the 3rd United States bank. They wanted to be able to detour the Federal Reserve System from taking over the American people and hurting our way of life. So what happened was, when he was arrested, that executive order had been passed from 1911 to every Joint Chiefs of Staff General at that time.
Was that the one where you said that it'll impoverish Americans, they can get rid of the Federal Reserve?
That's correct. That's exactly right. That was the second. Was the second order that he signed.
Right.
That's the one that has been held in these briefcases that we've been told so much about. That has all this information that's fixing to be released to the American public. And
I just want to mention that back in 1911, there was a group of wealthy, I guess you could call them members of the Illuminati, or at least a faction that did not want to see the world, the United States, enslaved. They wanted to see everyone become wealthy, just like them. And they went down with the Titanic, which was owned by J.P. Morgan, the White Star Line.
That's right.
The
world's 6 richest families. Yeah. That's what they were, and they were all of European, Australian, and Canadian and American descent. And you're exactly right. They, along with those 6 families, a lot of people don't know, but there was hundreds and hundreds of actual scientists that were given free vouchers for this Titanic, the grand voyage of them all is what they called it at the time, and they were all given vouchers, free rides. Let's get them on this ship. And as it was out to sea, the captain was ordered to steer into an iceberg because the ship was built in such a way that it would crack, that it would sink, and they had only enough reserve lifeboats for only the people they wanted to get off the ship. And that's how it went down. So in one fell swoop, you've got the 6 richest families of the world who did not want a Federal Reserve System, and the scientists who had cures for all these cancers that would become of us now, all these diseases that were back then. They had, all this technology, and it was all gone in one fell swoop. And then, of course, in 1913, the Federal Reserve was created in secrecy on December 23rd, 1913, with illegal members of Congress. But when Bush was arrested, he signed these executive orders. And he was the last president of the United States of America Republic. He was the last one. There has been no other president since 1992 when he got out of office. They've all been CEOs of the corporation. They have not been true presidents. So that's why these original members of Congress went in front of Bill Clinton and at gunpoint was able to force him to sign this into law, because at the time, the only true members of Congress, which were 15 of them, 1 through 15, were the only republic left of the United States of America. That's how it became law, and it stands today. So there is so much that is in secrecy behind the scenes, but most of it has worked for us. We just don't know it yet until now. With this interview and also with the disclosures that are fixing to come out in the next few days, we're going to hear a lot about these suitcases and all of the information, including the original 13th Amendment. And by the way, one of the executive orders that was signed by President Bush at the time dates all the way back to 1859, because we were under martial law since Buchanan slammed the gavel and put us under martial law. President Bush signed an executive order that said that every law, every executive order, every proclamation, every congressional law that was made since 1859, once we were under martial law, is null and void. Doesn't exist lawfully and will not exist once this transition happens, because we were under martial law and Congress was under the sine die. So it was not a legal Congress. It was not no longer a legal lawful session. Therefore, there were no legal laws since 1859. So if you go all the way back to 1859, that's a long time, for us to be sitting here twiddling our thumbs and going, what's been going on to us? Well, now you know. From the lawyers to the executive orders to the presidents have been, squandered away and fighting against us. We the people now come forward through these actions called the Farmers' Claims Programs. These are the actions that will put us into this new age because of the NESARA law and also the St. Germain World Trust account and the Global Debt Facility accounts. All these trusts will come to aid the whole population. And here it is. We're there. We're finally breaking free of all this totalitarianism and this communism that has been running the country, forever.
And basically, it's also going to include debt forgiveness, because all the laws since 1859 are illegal. Therefore, all the debt and monetary system is illegal itself.
Absolutely.
So that's going to everybody American. So this law passed. It was signed into law in 2000. And I guess at least those people who haven't seen changes on the horizon, go ahead and talk a little bit what happened. How did they? What happened next in that process?
Well, you had the members of Congress who were lawful. They were 15 of them, of course. Like I stated, they made this law, and the law goes to the accords. The accords had to be enacted, and none of the
what is an accord?
The accord is it's not a law, but it's like a byproduct of something that is let's consider it a byproduct of a gift. If you want to call it a gift, that's the best way to say it, because the accords of the NESARA law and the Farmers Claims programs that was written for the people are the accords. It's something it has to happen. It's like a statement that has to come to fruition for the people, because it is a republic constitutional original type of law or gift or whatever you want to call it. So these accords were made into NESARA, but the judges at the time didn't want to implement them.
The Supreme Court judges.
The Supreme Court
basically the farmer claims, they went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they ruled on these accords.
That's exactly right. And so you have all these accords, what we call reforms. And I will get to the word reforms in a few minutes with another piece of history from this past 3 months. But the reforms, or accords as we call them, were supposed to be implemented. They were supposed to be brought into action. And in 2000, you have an 18-month window to announce the NESARA law, or the Reformation law, or the accords. So it's all one and the same. But at the end of that 18 months was September 10th of 2001. And of course you understand that through the Changes on the Horizon miniseries, that Bush 41 was brought into the White House, and that Bush 43 was made to leave the White House and go elsewhere. The reason is because they wanted the real president at that time, what we thought was a real president, to be in a place that he could be in front of kids or women or whoever, so when these attacks on the World Trade Centers happened, people would see him as a bright figure, almost as a heavenly figure, because of where he was. It was all part of this master plan by the Scherf family to make the Scherfs look good and everybody else look bad. So Bush 43 is in a classroom reading to kids, and you got Bush 41 in the White House, which is illegal because no past president can step foot in the White House after they leave office, and he was there. So he's the one who was able to control himself, and some of the other people that were in the office at the time were able to control what was happening with the demolition of the World Trade Centers, the stealing of the bullion to pay the Farmer Claims Program, and also to detonate, destroy, obliterate any record, any type of system, computer drives, whatever they have, which included the section of the Pentagon that they flew the missiles into. Everything associated with NESARA, everything associated with the Farmers Claim Program,
basically
disintegrated.
There was a group within the Pentagon that was supporting the farmer claims, because I guess the General Schwarzenegger was connected. I don't know if he was a part of this group, but I believe it was the Office of Naval Investigations.
It was.
In the Pentagon got supposedly what happened is a plane flew over the Pentagon and delivered a missile payload. I don't know if that's what you've heard.
Yes, it is. I've heard that the plane flew over. There was 2 missiles that went in exactly where the new Naval Command Center was, and they destroyed the whole side of the building, including any records and any people that were there at the time. From what we're hearing, when the announcements come, you will find out what really happened to the people that were on the planes that went into the World Trade Centers and the farm in Pennsylvania. And those people were probably gassed to death. We have heard they were taken to an undisclosed location and put in chambers and murdered. So that is part of the announcements that will be coming out, is what happened to the original people that were on those flights, whereby we have been told that they were killed when the planes hit the building. The planes were all under remote control, every single one of them, because they had to be. But they had to use planes that were supposed to have normal people and normal flight attendants on there. All that had to be done before they could be missile guided into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and of course the field in Pennsylvania. So all of this was orchestrated. It was done.
Also, I heard a rumor that Alan Greenspan was in the World Trade Center on the day of 9/11, getting ready to go on air about the news. Have you heard about that?
Yes, I understand that Alan Greenspan was made to start the announcements. and Bush 41. Now, Alan Greenspan at that time was not, on our side. Alan Greenspan was one of the dark agenda, and he was made to go to a certain place. It was all part of the plan. Don't forget that the Bush-Scherf plan immediately had this figured out as to how they were going to do this and who was going to be involved. So anybody who was to make an announcement or to change something knew it wasn't going to happen anyway. So they were just kind of actors in this whole field getting ready to have this thing done. But I will tell you this. After 9/11, when we found out the true numbers, a lot of the masses that have woken up understand the true numbers of death of 9/11. That was the spark that took the military generals, the rest of the military, and also the nations of the world to come in and make sure that they could get the Reformation law, the Reformation Act law, whatever you want to call it, the NESARA. They wanted to make sure that they could get this thing in motion. By 2009, they had it in full motion. They were able to do that by using the president that we have now. So all of this has been one grand master plan behind the scenes of what the Bush-Scherf family did to us on 9/11. But 9/11 was the spark that started the gasoline fire for the good guys to take off. We call them the A-Team. They're white knights, but they're called the A-Team because they are the very few that is responsible for everybody who is fixing to receive all this wealth back to the world. So it's happening as we speak right now.
Okay. And as far, I guess this goes into the Obama administration. In the Changes on the Horizon series, I talked a little bit about how basically Obama has been trying to block NESARA, but you believe, well, why don't you talk about what you think is going on?
To understand President Obama, that's not his real name. Everybody knows that, but everybody thinks he is somebody else. And the truth is that he is somebody else, but he is nothing what the media or the independent media sites or the bloggers have put up to be. He's somebody that's totally different, and this has all been orchestrated to make sure that he is safe, that he can do the job and do the protocol that the white knights have given him since day one. President Obama goes way back, and you have to be very spiritual on who he is. And I'm not talking about the times of the Bible. I'm talking about, not talking about Jesus or anybody like that. I'm talking about who he is and where his bloodline came from, how it all started. That is going to be the coup de grace to this whole thing, is that one president that is in operation of the last country in the world that has not been taken over by the Rothschild dynasty that has great wealth, and we are that country. If we lose, then we're done for. But this president was groomed, was taken in at a younger age to make sure that he could come about and help us come into this golden age that we were fixing to come into. The reason is because if you look at certain things that have happened since 2004, not 2008 or 2009, but 2004, there are certain things that he has done and said that a lot of people didn't catch until the election started happening in 2008. But this,
like what?
There's been some statements that were made, and I have these written down. I would love to read them off because they're a lot more intricate if you tell them word by word. But he said that there is no white man, there is no black American, there is no Hispanic American, or there is no Chinese American. There is only a United States of America. And he claims as to, there's no war in the world can be so great that we lose sight of who we are. That, we're not the people of the world that are going to be fighting each other until we have one specific person that owns, the whole world. So he made these statements in 2004, and if anybody was listening, they would have understood that he had to get in bed with the bad guys to be able to weed out the bad guys. He's nothing more than a fishing pole for the good guys who are in charge of this whole thing. And when you go fishing, you need a good fishing pole. If you want to catch the baddest of the bad, then you got to have something to get in there and do it with. The investment packets, which are called freedom packs, are the monies that were being used as the bait. They were put into certain places and chipped. So when the bad guys stole them, put them in some kind of offshore account and tried to make credit off of them or use the money itself, then they knew who took them, who they were, and then they had indictments ready. They brought back the packets, put them right back where they started, and then the next criminal would come in and try to get some of that cheese that's on this big wheel. And the president was used as a fishing pole to bring in all these criminals. And if you've noticed, we've seen a lot of people either getting sick, falling down, having
You mean bankers,
CEOs, politicians, all of them, every one of them. You're seeing all these people going to the, quickly. Like Goldman Sachs, you've heard about some of the higher ups of Goldman Sachs, like Henry Paulson, being cloned. Well, it is very possible that some of these bigger bankers would just not stop doing what they were doing, so they were taken down, and a clone was put in their place to keep everybody at bay until the announcements come. So,
but also, wasn't there something ruling that allowed Interpol within the United States?
Oh, absolutely. Interpol was was taken over by good guys, just as the FBI and part of the CIA and some of the other alphabet agencies do have the good guys that have been infiltrated into those companies that are now working to help us out, and they're helping to bring all this in. So you cannot...
Even the IRS? We got
yes.
Some good people.
Yes.
Okay.
The IRS and the Federal Reserve were both absorbed into the Treasury Department in June of 2011. And in doing so, there were certain people that were put into place that were either appointed or were made to be in place to make sure that they could keep records of all transactions, who did what, where, when, and how, and why they did it. So that way the indictments would grow from this big, which was 10,000 last year, to this big, which is 170,000 this year. So they want to make sure that they catch every single criminal and make them an indictment for their actions. So once we get into this new transition, once the new United States Treasury is announced, once everything is done, we do not have to worry about any of these criminals being out in society anymore. If you pass one on the street that is not a clone and they were just out on the street, then you can look at them and say, hey, you're a regular person. But the difference between you and I is I'm a citizen, and I'm the one who was able to receive a prosperity package, to where you are a criminal and you don't get the benefits of an American citizen because you're a criminal, but you're still out on the street. So there's a lot of corruption,
Talk about what happened, because we both had a similar experience with Sue Myrick, Congresswoman Sue Myrick.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll tell mine first. Very, very good, because Sue comes in. Now, Sue, as I understand, has been sick, has breast cancer, but last year was her last year in the United States Congress as our North Carolina representative. She comes into my work, and her husband always comes in with her, of course. And so while some of the other persons at my work are saying hey, congratulating her on her retirement, how are you doing, giving her hugs, I waited till the smoke's cleared away. I walk up to her and pull her into private, and I say, Miss Mark, I got to ask you just first off the bat, I understand you're retiring at the end of the year, but I got to know, are you an attorney? And she said, oh, good heavens, no. Her eyes dropped just like that. She was like, oh, heavens, no. And so I said, well, Sue, we as the people of America that have really woken up to the corruption in Washington, we know about the Reformation Act, we know about NESARA, we know about the new law of the land, and we also know about the original 13th Amendment prohibiting lawyers from being in office. And I just want to tell you that, I know that you're under a gag order, but we all know about it, and we're all ready for it. So I just wanted to make sure that you're not an attorney, but I just wanted to also reiterate the fact that we know that NESARA is real, the Reformation law is real, and that we're ready for it to come out. And she bowed her head, and she looked up at me with the most graceful look and said, yes, absolutely. And so she acknowledged in so many words that things are on the roll and that NESARA is real, and that really warmed my heart. Even though she may have been one of the good ones, she may have been forced to leave, she could have been one of the bad ones. We don't know yet because of the truth that has not come out yet. But most of the senators and the House of Representatives that are in our Congress since the year 2000 are bad guys because of a law that was passed in 2000. dedicating every single member of Congress to the United Nations. There was a law passed. They had to sign documents that they were then members of the UN. And if that is the case and it is true, then every single member of Congress, every one of them have been compromised. So when we have this transition, we will have new elections. We will have an extreme amount of people that will be able to step forward. You will be able to, to literally campaign for yourself, to campaign for your brother or your friend or whoever, and say, we are the people of this country. We want to represent this country because we are the real citizens that will be running the country now under the NESARA law. The only requirement is that you cannot be illegal and you cannot be a lawyer. So if you are definitely a citizen born in this country and you follow the original Republic Constitution of 1789-91 with the 1810 TONA Amendment, then guess what? You will be able to go out and make a statement for yourself and try to become one of the new leaders of our new nation.
What happens to all the attorneys that are currently, I'm not necessarily running our government, but just the attorneys in general, if you're a member of the bar?
I'm not privy to say at this point because there's been a couple of different revisions on that, but I do know that every single bar association attorney is guilty of treason, and they will be dealt with harshly. They're thinking that some of the lawyers that are not bar association lawyers, some of the judges who have never been lawyers, will be retrained, of course, on your constitutional common law forums, which is everything included except for your rape and your murder or your physical injury. If you are physical injury somebody, rape or murder, then you automatically go to jail or worse. But under the common law system, there will not be frivolous laws like there is now. But
like the state of Virginia is suing you over hitting a traffic sign or something.
Exactly. There will be no more of that. No more going to jail because you didn't pay your car tax, because there will be no car tax. But anybody who is a bar associated lawyer, judge, or anybody in Washington will be dealt with harshly, because that is the original amendment, and they knew it when they took the bar. So that is the most important part of NESARA. The most important part is not the money. It's not getting the taxes away from you, and it's not some of the little things that we smile at NESARA and go, yes,
like
this
debt forgiveness.
Yeah, like debt forgiveness. We need this. We need it. It's not that. The most important part is the implementation of the original 13th Amendment being known to the people. Because if we get rid of the corrupted lawyers who have been advocating this money for the crown, and destroying us people of the world, then we've got rid of everything that provides the money for somebody else. We're able to bring the common law back into play, so we are able to live free and happy and have that money. So the most important thing about NESARA is the implementation of the original 13th Amendment. The rest of the stuff is just gravy.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention earlier, my interaction with Sue Meyer, because I was handing out NESARA flyers that I got from Dove of Oneness website while that was still around, about NESARA, and I handed her, she was given one, and she just looked at it and smiled, and that was it. She nodded. She didn't say anything else. But
they're pretty scared.
Yeah, I know. But what do you think about Ron Paul? I mean, surely he must know about NESARA. I mean, why?
Ron Paul was one of the good guys in the beginning. He really tried to stand up and make it known about everything that has been out there and what has been happening. He woke up a lot of people. I'm hoping, one side of my brain, the good side, says that, remain hopeful. He's a good guy. He's just had to drop out a couple of times because the pressure. But then the other side of my brain says, he is a red herring, and he is part of that cabal government out of Texas that is extremely bad. And even though he has said that he's a good guy, he could very well have been compromised and become a bad guy. So it's on defense about Dr. Paul, but the one thing that he mentioned during the last election of 2012 when he was running his campaigns, when you saw him on his forums, he would talk about letting the Department of Commerce handle certain things. And the Department of Commerce is actually a corporation. It is not a true thing of the Republic, and that's not good. So that was a sign there. Also, he had mentioned a couple of other things that were more in tune with something that the corporations would have, and so we were kind of questioning. And later on in the later part of last year, why is he mentioning these little things like this? When he should still be talking about the originalities of the common law forms, but then again he can't because of the gag orders. He can't mention NESARA. He cannot mention the original 13th Amendment because it would blow everything to high water. So he really probably had to stay quiet, but he probably was compromised. He probably started out as a good guy, and
maybe he got cloned.
Yeah, he very well may have been cloned. Absolutely.
And what about Dennis Kucinich? Because I heard that he was going to be the interim president. Supposedly, after NESARA is announced, the current president's got to step down and there'll be an interim president until a new elections.
That's correct. That's exactly what will happen, because Obama, even though he is a white knight, he is a corporation president, so he will be stepping down. And then when new elections happen, he will probably choose Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as his running mate because of who Robert F. Kennedy is, how many people love the Kennedy family, and the people will know the truth about Ted Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, and all the assassinations and murders that have took place against the Kennedy family and where they came from. So you will see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. be asked as a running mate for President Little when that time comes.
I'd like to mention that after Kennedy was killed, JFK, his children were switched out. They were actually, I don't even know if I'm supposed to allowed to talk about this, but they were switched out, and John Jr. and his sister were both changed. They were given new surrogate families, and they're still alive today.
Right, and you will also probably find out when all this transition happens that Princess Diana is still alive also. And that very well
is she still living with her husband Dodi Fayed?
We don't know for sure, but we do know that she was so distressed over seeing the changing of the royal family into their guard of reptilian form that she had made it a note to be sure to be out of that country as quickly as possible because of what she saw and what she knew was happening. The best way to stay alive and to do things is to run and make your life somewhere else and get out of the scene, just as Elvis did. When you hear about Elvis Presley and the John Burroughs name, you're going to realize certain things there too, because there are certain things that have happened with some of these people who don't just have heart attacks and die or die in car crashes. There are certain things that happen, and everybody says, well, you're being a very, very bad conspiracy theorist because that's just bull crap and it never happened. Well, let me tell you, it does happen, and it has happened. And then when the people who call us conspiracy theorists find out that we're all truthers, then they're the ones who are going to be really sick because they didn't open their third eye. They didn't allow their mind to really put the pieces of the puzzle together like we have. And that's what you have to really realize is get down into the rabbit hole. Don't just look down there with the flashlight, because there's more all the way under and there's more that you can see. But the royal family, the Bush family, all the ones. Now, there was a really neat story that I came across, and I'm going to share it with everybody because I have a very good friend of mine who used to work in the electronics field back in the 80s and 90s at his younger age. He used to install security camera systems and a lot of wiring to boot. He was at the Jim Baker facility in Fort Mill, South Carolina, when they were, building a lot of the additions onto the church.
That was PTL.
Yeah, the PTL Corporation, absolutely. And so my friend is in this, they're building onto what they consider the pyramid section. Get what I'm saying here? They call it the pyramid section, which was the office of Jim Baker himself. It was a huge office that was about maybe 10 stories high, and it was called the Pyramid Home. And this is where Jim Baker would go and do whatever his office is. He could, stay there for periods of time because of a sleeping facility they had built, but they also had multiple cameras and wires and detection stuff. Now, as they're building this system, it would have been a 2-month job at most. He said it would have taken maybe 12 weeks, but at most 2 months. 9, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever you want to call it. As they're installing the system, they're getting paid daily, and they're getting paid fringe benefits. Like, hey, here's an extra stack of hunters. You guys are doing great. Just make sure you do it right. So they started taking stuff out and redoing it to make sure it was even better quality work. They started putting in a little extra stuff, and then they started selling Jim Baker on the idea of, well, you need a camera here, or you need to do something up here. And so they turned this job into a 3-year job. A 10-week job would become a 3-year job, maybe longer than that. They milked it. As those 3 years were passing, every day, every week, they would see these guys come in with plastic crates. And they were all stacked up on this hand truck, and they were going into this vault system. They would open up the crates and stack just stacks of cash into these little vault systems inside this pyramid. And my buddy said, I cannot believe how much money was stored there. But he said, where did it all go? He said, they kept bringing it in, but they were always stacking it. And we were just like, where did it all go? It just, all this, probably billions of dollars just gone. Well, we come to find out this past month in March of 2013 that the National Enquirer, which is a rag that is put out at the grocery stores here locally and probably across the nation, has 4 pictures. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on those pictures, you've got Jimmy Swaggart, you've got another preacher that I didn't recognize, Jim Baker, and Billy Graham. And these 4 preachers are all dying. They're on their last days, especially Billy Graham. They say that all these preachers are very sick and they don't have long to live, just like the Bushes did back in the Globe magazine middle of last year, just like the Clintons did middle of last year, and the Pope, and also the royal family, including some of their heirs. So all of these people we're seeing that are involved with religion, organized religion, and also the higher-ups of the Illuminati and the cabal governments are all sick or falling or dying or whatever the case may be. So the Jim Baker story is very, very constituent to what we're seeing happen now with the Vatican and the Pope and everything else that's going on.
But why do you think the Pope stepped down?
The Pope stepped down because he's reptilian. That's why. If anybody does not believe there's other things that are from other planets that are on this earth, they need to go back into their life and they need to really seriously meditate and think about all these stars and planets that we have, because there are certain things and people and beings that are on this earth right now that pass by you every day, and you wouldn't even know it. And the humans of this earth are so dumbled down and asleep to what's going on around them, they do not see the sisters and brothers of our sister planet that are here, that actually talk to us every day. And they do not see the reptilian people that are passing by or are in our higher governments. Billy Graham always slept with his eyes open. His wife made the statement, Bill is so I'm so afraid of Bill because of the way that he sleeps. I wake up in the middle of the night and he's there looking at me throughout the middle of the night. He never sleeps with his eyes closed. And Bill frightened her, and as you know, she died a few years back. And Billy Graham, you don't see much of him, but when you do see him, he's always very sick or he's ill or something. But if you look at the facial structure of the Pope and of Billy Graham and of the Scherf family, especially the Bushes, 41 and his wife, you will see the reptilian species and their face and their eyes. They all look the same. And you can see this, but you have to look. You have to not guess at it. You have to really, truly look. So we're not here alone, but we do have protection from our sister galaxies and our sister planets that are in those galaxies. So this whole thing is all about the control of humankind.
Okay. And I also heard that the Pope stepped down because of the child sex scandals in the Vatican. The Catholic Church. I'm sure that was probably just one small fragment at all, and who knows, maybe it has something to do with the banking system. I don't know if you've heard anything
Yeah, it was about the gold.
Gold.
Yeah, they wanted to take down the bank, the sex scandals and everything with the Pope and the clergymen and the Catholic priests started way back when the Pope was first taken into custody. So here we're seeing the Pope step down, whatever the case may be, because quite frankly, he was probably either taken off the planet or he was put into solitary confinement somewhere, or maybe even eradicated, as the case may be, because of war crimes throughout the world. Crimes to humanity, I'm sorry. But the Pope that we're seeing now knew that the Vatican Bank could no longer be a bank. He knows that there can no longer be a religious sect that just takes in the gold of the world and calls itself a church, but is really a bank. So the thing that we're seeing with the Vatican has probably been righted by now, and we're seeing the culmination of that because of the old Pope leaving and the new Pope coming in and actually helping people by washing their feet or giving them something back.
Well, you've heard of the prophecy from Saint Malachi talking about this is going to be a last pope. So maybe, I don't know, maybe this is the end of the Catholic Church, or the previous version of it. Maybe it's going to go into a different incarnation where they actually help people.
Right. and that's hard to say until everything comes around.
Right.
I'm sure some of our star brothers and sisters who will be helping out with the announcements, because there's going to be 2 or 3 of them that will be in the group that will help out with the announcements. But I'm sure that we're going to find out that they're going to tell people, this is what you have been told in the Bible. It's this thick. This is what you've been told. But when you look at it, this is actually what is real in the good book. The actual laws, the old laws that were of the Creator and what we're. So we will see a very, very reduction of everything that has been a lie to us. And the Bible was written as a literary, a fictional form, to basically just to be a good piece of, it was a good read. Just like if you're reading a fiction, like, anything that you want to read that's fiction now. It's the same thing, but the Illuminati used it for control. And that's what they have done through the years. But yeah, so the Catholic Church and all the churches for that matter, people will know that we are now in the age of Aquarius and no longer in the age of Pisces. So these people will slowly say, I'm okay because I'm doing right by my fellow man. And, I'm doing things to help out my fellow human. And I don't have to go and give 10% of my earnings to a corrupt church.
Well, it's actually interesting you talk about the 10%. Back in the ancient Israel, they would actually, the 10% was supposed to be for everything. It wasn't just a tax, a tithe to the church. It was a tax on it because the church ran the government. So it was actually a 10% tax on, just like, today we're taxed probably 70% when you include everything taxed over and over again.
Right.
So just thought I'd mention that. Now let's talk a little bit, to wrap this up. Let's talk about the One People's Trust. Do you know anything about that, or is that something you feel well versed in?
I'll tell you what. I have not read into the OPPT. I have not read into some of the sister companies like that, or organizations rather, that have claimed as to what they're doing and who they are. And this is why, because I have a very, very good friend that is in California. She is a dear. She has been in touch with 3 of the main white knights since 30 years ago. And up until about the end of 2011, she was in regular contact with them until the culmination of this big stuff we're seeing now started to happen. And as we talk, we both know for a fact that only the white knights are responsible for what is going on. They're the ones who have completed the paperwork with the UCC filings. They're the ones who have taken the military and strategically placed them in certain areas. They've taken the president, strategically put him in office. They've done things to be sure that we can go back to our original sovereignty, and they know how to do it. And Roy Swaysinger Jr., again, that's not his real name, but Roy Swaysinger Jr. is the main trustee of this whole thing. The trustee is real. So he's put himself in a position to make sure all this stuff is happening correctly, and he's got the right people behind him to do it. When somebody like the OPPT comes by, or some of the other people that are gurus or in these little factions, and they claim that they're doing something, they're doing this, and they never mention the white knights or the trustees that are responsible for doing all this. I see those people as dark agenda and only dark agenda. I see those people as being trying to take credit for something that they didn't do, or trying to throw out disinformation to throw people off incredibly and get their hopes up, and to possibly steal money for them, because some of these organizations want you to donate so they can continue with their work. And there is no work.
Well, basically, this Heather of OPPT, she claimed that she did work with actually the Rothschilds, and she and she's not a group within the Farmer Claims Group has tried contacting her, and she just doesn't open up any dialogue. So people are just wondering, well, where she's getting all this information, and people are actually being arrested for filing these UCC claims. And of course, the government is just telling the government to ignore the UCC anyway. So really, it's all just a waste of time. But I mean, obviously, some people may feel that maybe they feel like they're doing something. But you got to be very careful when filing any of that paperwork, because who knows? Maybe that's going to opt you out.
That's right.
The new prosperity that's coming on. So
you got to be real careful when you're fighting anything, because the White Knights A-team has been trained to do what they're doing. They know how to do it, and they know when to do it and where to do it. So these people know exactly how to do their work. There is no other, because it's got to remain in secrecy. This thing has required secrecy from the very top level on down since the culmination of it in 1954, when all of when the first people who started this thing said we need to bring back a republic. So they have done this thing in secrecy, so it works just like the Illuminati have done it, and they thought their plan would work. Well, guess what? It's not. Our plan has worked better, because we actually have a constitution, and we have the right people who know how to do stuff to get it back. So the fake is gone, the real stuff comes up. But the people that are going out into the world and saying, file this or sign this or believe in me and we can make this all happen, yada yada, they're not real, because if they were real, they would know that they have to be in secret also, that they have to do things behind the scenes without letting anybody in. So yes, we're all waking up, but we're all waking up to the historical part of what has happened to us, and what we know is fixing to happen with the new money and the people who are who are really making things happen, and the people who try to take credit for that, they're the ones who should be in jail.
Well, the OPPT, they also claim that every person's going to get is it like $5 billion?
Won't happen.
I mean, where do they think this money's going to come? Well, like you said, it won't happen, and I don't know. I don't think Saint Germain is going to. That's something we haven't talked about. Saint Germain. Have you ever had any interactions with Saint Germain, or
not at all? But when I've seen and read all of these stuff that I have on Francis Bacon, on Christopher Columbus, on the New World, the Count Saint Germain, which was Saint Germain as he came into the signing of the Declaration, a lot of people will always say, who's the guy on the back of the $2 bill with the hat on? That's just odd. You got all these guys in white hair, but who is the guy in the back of the $2 bill? And I have to remind them that you can't go by what history has been taught in the schools. What you have to do is look deeper into the rabbit hole and really read as to who these people are and what they did. Like George Washington, like Saint Germain, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Ben Franklin. But Saint Germain, and in changes,
he's Uncle Sam.
There you go. Yeah, and Saint Germain, is the guy in Changes on the Horizon series. That series in part 1 just puts out exactly what is not only read and also studied, but also comes out as truth as to where Saint Germain came from, who he was, and what he did to get this nation started. Many people do not know that Europe was supposed to be a United States of Europe. They originally wanted all the European nations to become one. They wanted all of the monarchies to join together to have prosperity, to go into the new age, and and it could spread across the world in times of decades. Well, because of the French and the English deciding through the Rothschild dynasty, hey, we don't want the other people to have this or that. We want to control it all. It all went to hell. And that's just the way it was. You had wars, you had culminations of money that became fake, the gold was being eradicated from the people, and then Saint Germain said the only place that he knew that he could create an actual United States was in the Americas, and that's what he did. And if you listen to some of the Daryl Freck interviews from 2010, he speaks of Canada and Mexico wanting to become part of the United States of America because it is North America, but they want the same constitutional rights that we had in 1776 before it all became under a U.S. corporation constitution. So these countries will adopt the original constitution of the United States, and the whole world for that matter. All the nations of the world will want to have a version of our constitution because Saint Germain knew it was the greatest freedom paperwork that would ever exist, and that he could fuel the golden age with the funding that he has through the United States of America. All the nations of the world are demanding the United States be on the gold standard and get rid of the corruption so we can all live in this golden age. They all want it. The only way that we don't know about it is because of our mainstream media. So
there is a gag order.
Yes, there is a gag order.
That's why
yes.
You don't know, probably.
Absolutely. So all these people in the media won't tell you about it, but it is real. Canada, Europe, just last week, we're also talking about the global funding and the NESARA law coming into act because things were so bad over there. We're right here on it. It is coming. It's fixing to hit us any day, and you will know when the announcements start that it is here. But all of this stuff is because of the count of Saint Germain. I mean, because of him and
well, who do you think he is? I mean, some say he's a vampire, but I think there might actually be two Saint Germains. One is a shape-shifting vampire, draconian, and no, there's the real one. That was probably like one of these avatars who actually did learn how to attain physical immortality.
Of course, I'm pretty sure that the Saint Germain that we all want to know and probably do know, POOF is a very spiritual guy who has some insight to what is going on around us, and he was visited by Saint Germain, and he was told that he would have to become a writer, and he would have to do things to help bring people up to speed with what is happening right now. So Saint Germain, I believe, is an ascended master. He is probably a god. That's probably is exactly what he is in some form or another, whether he's from another universe, whether he's from the old earth or whatever. He is a God that is here to help bring about this new age of humanity that will last forever.
I've also heard rumors of how there's an office in the White House where Saint Germain, basically it's the office, I'm not going to say it's the office of Saint Germain, but it's his office and where he communicates with the White House. I don't know if you've heard anything like that.
I have not, but that's
okay.
a wow.
I've also heard stories. I think Double Oneness talked about this before. I believe she was killed, but she mentioned how Saint Germain would show up on these meetings. They would have basically the president would have all these secret meetings, and he would just materialize, and they would try to, they'd bring their guns out and get ready to shoot him. And I think Sanana might have been there too, and they're saying, if you shoot, we'll kill you. Don't do it. So they just popped in on these secret meetings, and so they knew they can't plot in secret anymore.
I think the world will be totally shocked at when they see who has been helping us, then when they see who our creators, how we can communicate with our one creator, the divine. A lot of people will be totally shocked as to the lies that the Illuminati and the Cabal governments have used against the people of the world for so long. And by using money, power, greed, religion, socialism, and also beings from other planets too. So all of it is because they want the planet Earth. They love the planet Earth as we do, but it's ours, it's not theirs. So,
okay, what do you think about Cyprus? What's going on over there?
I have heard through the grapevine that Cyprus was a drug operation that went horribly wrong, and because they're now looting the banks is because the government of Cyprus, which is corrupt, wants the drug money. They need that money, and the drug thing went bad. So what are they doing? They're making sure that they take people's deposits. They're closing down accounts, and now people are starting to make runs, which starts the fire. So it takes one thing of people not being able to have money and starting to man other stuff. And 1 week ago, if you will notice, 1 week ago when you saw the thing hit with Cyprus, then you started seeing more military out and about. We had National Guard in Charlotte. We had military planes flying over from Bragg and Lejeune in droves. We've had lights flickering in the middle of the night from whether it was aircraft or spacecraft that are here to protect us. But all of this is starting to happen. We're seeing it in Chicago. We're seeing it in Texas. We're seeing it in New York. We're seeing the bankers being taken out of buildings in New York. Chase Manhattan went down. Jamie Dimon stepped down, started pointing his fingers at the other bankers. So all of this is culminating in the past week. And they said once the trigger is pulled that we will start to see everything happen so quickly, and now it's happening. So once you see the military, you can rest assured, don't get nervous, get glad.
So we're not going to see martial law or...
We're already under martial law.
Okay,
See,
but like the troops marching in the street or...
Only an assistance. It's only an assistance.
Okay.
They will only be there.
They're not going to confiscate guns or nothing like that?
Absolutely not. Because the military comes to where I work and they buy ammunition from me. There's people in the Guard, the Army. I've got a friend who is actually a detail for dignitaries, and he's in the Army, and he told me that they would never, ever, ever go against the American people, and there's no way to make them. He said our country is about as foolproof as you can get, except for the little handful of dirty politicians that try to tell you otherwise. So we have got all military on our side. The police, the sheriffs, well, their offices will probably be taken over by the military, but it will be an assistance to make sure that they can control those police and sheriffs, just in case the corporation tries something with the police, with the sheriff's department.
When you say try something, do you think we're going to see the implosion of the U.S. dollar? Do you think we're going to see hyperinflation?
It's already happened. No, we won't see any more inflation like we have in the past. Everything has already happened, but it's happened so silently that you didn't see it, you didn't recognize it as the dollar crashing. I've said this many times before, but if you go and you go to the bank and you ask the bank for a stack of 20s or 5s, 10s, $100 bills, whatever the case may be, tell them that you want the freshest money right off the printer. You don't want a circulated money. You want something that's uncirculated with a band around it. They'll give it to you. But if you look at the date, it'll say Series 2009. The reason is because the dollar has crashed for months ago, but since 2009, they were not allowed to print any dated money 10, 11, 12, or 2013. So the money has slowly been running out. That's the secret way to do it, so you don't cause people to go crazy. So now, once they make the announcements, they'll say the new U.S. Treasury is here, we have the gold-backed currency, we have this and that, and your dollar's no good. But leave your money in the bank, because the accounting system of the U.S. Treasury knows how much you have in the bank, what it is, where it is, and then you won't lose anything.
Will that convert into gold dollars?
It will convert into the new U.S. Treasury money, yes.
And is that pre-1913 levels?
It will be pre-1910 bills. You will have coinage, but only 3 different types of coins now, and you will have actual bills that are pre-1910. There will be a 10, 20, and $100 bill, and that will be the brunt of it. But you will see everything without Federal Reserve or note on print. So everything will either say U.S. dollar, United States document, or something of that source. So you will not see Federal Reserve note.
You also mentioned that the rainbow currency that I mentioned changes on the horizon is incorrect. It's actually something different.
We do not want to call it rainbow currency because that's something that the New World Order has always tried to implement. We want to call it the Republic currency. We want to call it gold, silver, and platinum, which is correct on your other half. It's just that when you said the rainbow currency, a lot of people went, oh gosh, wait a second. And that rainbow currency phrase is very scary to a lot of people who are in the know. So if we say treasury money or Republic money, we're safe with that.
Okay. And do you want to make any comments about the dinar or the dong?
Dinar will hit above $10 for sure. It may take about maybe 1 or 2 weeks after everything comes with the announcements. But if you have invested in the Iraqi dinar, if you have went out and bought however many millions of shares or whatever and paid next to nothing, you've spent this much, and now it's going to be worth this much, because the Iraqi government, the Iraqi country, is the hub for the world now, the money system, and it had to be. They've got the most amount of gold there. It is all gold-backed money, and there will be exchange places, but the dinar is going to be the main exchange currency for the people who have true investments. But you might have to wait a little bit, but it's worth the wait. You waited this long, wait a few more days or a couple more weeks.
Are you saying that it's going to be the new world reserve currency?
Yes, absolutely.
It's going to replace the... Interesting.
Because the dollar is a corporation. See, the dollar was made the reserve currency because of the corporation of the United States. Now that every country has their sovereignty, then you will have one place that has more gold than others. But because they are sovereign, nobody's going to lose anything. What we have in the United States that dwarfs the dinar and the dong and everything else that is considered a currency in this world. The one thing that we have in the United States is NESARA. That is the bucket. The rest of the stuff is only a drop in the bucket. The NESARA law makes everybody prominent here in the U.S. So that's what we will see as the big factor.
Great. Well, the only thing we didn't talk about is the OITC. What do you think about that group? Do you think they're a scam?
I don't read much into the OITC because I'm so busy following the stuff that I've been trained and know how to follow on the white knights and the stuff you see in the papers. When I look at a paper or a television or hear something on the radio, I pick out the nuggets because disinformation is the best information that you can get. All these other companies that are out of this secrecy loop and they're saying that they're this and they're helping out with this, because they're not in secret, I don't trust them.
Yeah. We can even go down Wanta and CYMK and just there's so much to discuss. But I think it's a good place to stop.
Cool.
Is there anything else you briefly want to mention? Maybe what you think is going to happen in the future. I guess obviously I think it's going to be a positive future.
Oh yeah, very positive. There will be no negativity. Everybody's vibrations, their physical DNA will rise when this thing happens, because everybody will know that we will have the technology to heal ourselves. We will have our health restored with our wealth, and everybody will have what they need. And there's no more wars. You'll be able to go into a country and hug your fellow Mexican or your fellow Canadian or your fellow Iraqi, and there will not be anything else left but the love of the world. After 30 years, there will be no money, because money cannot overcome the value of love. So they will take, we as citizens will take money out of the equation. I will be helping people plant crops and show them how to grow stuff and help them with the food, and they will be helping me on how to build some more furniture because I love destroying wood. So people will build.
It's not exactly communism.
It's a barter system, okay. And that is not communism. That's love.
Well, and we could have amazing technology. I've heard rumors of technologies like replicator technology.
Yes.
Or literally, we could shut down all of our manufacturing facilities and just have a replicator in our homes and manifest whatever we want.
Everything that is considered a corporation entity or its byproduct will be gone in a few years. We will see the free energy pods, which will be released immediately, that I understand. So people will be able to have energy for their homes. There will be no more copper lines, no more deep power. You will be able to...
teleportation.
Yeah, teleportation will be there. So, we can go visit people in other countries on a whim. Or we can, go back in a short period of time and see, somebody or see something that, that has happened, and then come right back. So all this stuff will be available to us because it's been hidden from us. There will be what they call the DNA replicator. So if you cut your arm off, you can slip your hand into this device, and it will grow your hand back, your arm back, whatever the case may be, as it was. So all this stuff will be available to us because it was for us. And the fact that we will have this, and we will be able to look out and see a bright white sun and see no electrical lines, see no grids or anything that could harm us, no oil factories, no coal factories.
Cell phones that don't cause cancer.
Exactly. We will see all the stuff that we were meant to have, and that way we will start living longer and more healthier lives and better lives too. So all of the stuff that you have been accustomed to for the past hundreds of years up until the day, especially with the modern era, get rid of it. Start getting used to the fact that we're going to a very, very nice new golden age.
What do you plan on doing when you get... I guess, first of all, let's mention that even if you're not in the Prosperity Program, the original Farmer Claims Program, we're all going to get some money, right?
Yes, the Prosperity Programs will take care of everybody.
Even if you don't have dinars, you're still going to get ahead quite a bit.
Everybody will get...
Do you know what that number is?
$10 million. They will give every person on the planet what has been stolen from them, including extra because of the IRS and the Federal Reserve. But everybody through these roll programs, these trust accounts, the St. Germain trust account, everybody will be getting that much money because they want to use that to basically make everybody equal on their wealth. And then in years to come, people won't care about the money anyway because they'll be doing things out of goodness of their heart. So if I come up to John Doe and I say, hey, I've got a lot of money, I want to buy this from you. Well, he's already got money. So he's going to say, I don't need it. Let me just help you out because you're my brother. And then that's going to entice me to do the same for somebody else. You want to talk about pay it forward? Giving us this money right now and making everybody equal in that aspect, the pay it forward system is going to flow like a river. And then it's all going to go around and we're all going to be okay.
Do you think it's going to be hyperinflationary? I mean, if everybody has $10 million, the money would be like the Weimar Republic.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. Because, like I said, people will have what they need, and you don't have to worry about the inflationary period. People can still grow crops on their own. They can still make stuff out of wood. All this stuff, mankind can do itself without machines or computers. So, no, the inflationary period will be over with because the corporations fooled a lot of people with the banking system and the political systems through the inflationary periods. The Federal Reserve System did this throughout the years. If we're all like this, it can't happen anymore anyway. So you got to think about this, trading money for love. And that's where it's going to be. In 30 years from now, we're going to have a stack of money and we're going to go, this is just stuff. That's all that is. That's just material. Hey, I'm helping 5 guys down the street and they're doing the same for me. We're doing this thing on a barter system. That's what's cool because there's no worry anymore. No more worry.
Right. Great. Okay, well, I think this is a good place to stop. So thank you, Doug, for sharing this with us, and maybe in the future we can have another update.
Sure.
I'm hoping maybe the next time we do this interview,
we'll all be smiling.
we'll be smiling all the way to the. I would say to the bank, but it's more than just that.
The next one that we do actually, the next one we do, we'll actually have to travel, you and I, and go to some of these places and visit some people who may have been naysayers in the beginning, and the people who actually knew what we know right now. Yeah, so we can actually go to a lot of different people and say, hey, you knew this was coming. How do you feel now? Or we can interview other people.
Didn't you say Roy Swassenger was still alive?
Yes, from what we understand, he is still alive, but where his whereabouts are, we do not know at this time.
Because I know in Changing the Horizon, I mentioned that they changed him out of a clone, so who knows who Roy Swassenger is now, right?
We will know the truth when these announcements come, and they are coming fast, so be ready.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
Yes.
I've got a copy here of the 13th Amendment. Again, all this stuff is documented. There is a real Title of Nobility Amendment, and right here, this is from 1819 from Virginia, and it actually has the original 13th Amendment in this. So this document, you can go, I'm going to put it in the more information section so you can actually download this, and I encourage you to print out a copy for your own records. So anyway, thank you, Doug, for sharing that, and I think in the future it's going to be a very bright and beautiful place. I've done some hypnotic regressions on various people, and I asked them to look in the future, and what they've actually told me, of course the future is always subject to change, is that
beginning in 2014, we're going to see massive hyperinflation and then eventually a collapse of the dollar. And then by mid-2015, the situation gets so bad that the government finally releases the free energy technologies, replicator, teleportation, basically an attempt to save themselves, because when starvation gets on their footsteps, that's the only thing that's going to get them to basically get these changes to happen. Now, I like to think that maybe we can avert all that somehow, but I don't know. I don't know how we could do that. But I guess there's just either way. We can endure. The American people have gone through quite a bit, and really the people of the world. So if we've gotten this far without nuclear war and civil war, then I think we can last at least another 2 years. But hopefully it'll be a lot faster than that. So anyway, that's all I had to say, and thank you, everyone.